Talk a lot about how to become a lawyer in Ontario because that's the province I am licensed to practice law in. And I realize that there are different requirements for different provinces. So today we're going to talk about what are some of the different requirements to get licensed in Ontario, where I practice, BC, British Columbia, Alberta, and then Quebec. So just a bit of background. So for example, I am licensed to practice law in Ontario, which means that if I wanted to practice law in a different province, so for example, let's say I want to practice in Vancouver, I would need to get a license to practice in BC. We can only practice in the province that we're licensed in. So I'm going to now start talking about different provinces and requirements to get licensed. There are a few steps that are similar regardless of whatever province you want to get licensed in. So it doesn't matter if you want to get licensed in Ontario or BC, certain steps you will take regardless. So step number one is getting your NCA assessment. NCA is the National Committee on Accreditation, meaning that you will apply to the body with your degrees and transcripts, and they will assess your legal education. Once they do that, they'll let you know how many exams you're supposed to write or what you're supposed to do in order to get an NCA certificate of qualification, which means that you are now equivalent to someone who went to a Canadian law school. So you have to apply to the NCA. You have to write the NCA exams or whatever your assessment tells you to do. Those are the two steps that you need to take regardless of whatever province you want to get licensed in. So let's move on to Ontario first because, that's where I live and I know more about Ontario than other provinces. So let's get into what you need to do to be licensed in Ontario. Once you've done the NCA exams, you will apply to the Law Society of Ontario to get licensed. So what are the steps that you need to take? So you will apply online, fill out some forms, and get into the lawyer licensing process with the Law Society. You need to take 2 licensing exams, which is the barrister and the solicitor exam. Separate exams, separate training material, and you have to study for both exams separately and write them separately. So this is what we call the bar exams, the lawyer licensing exams in Ontario. So that's what you need to do. You also need to complete the experiential training program. What that basically means is that you need to get experience. There are 2 ways to get this in Ontario. First, you can article for 10 months straight, continuously. And by articling, I mean that you will apply for a position with a law firm and work under a supervised lawyer for 10 months. So you need to do that in order to get your lawyer license. If you don't do that, you can't get a license. That's one way of completing your experiential training component. The other way of completing your experiential training component is that you can do the law practice program, which is offered by Toronto Metropolitan University, which was Ryerson before. And that's an 8-month program, 4 months of training, 4 months of, legal experience at a firm or a company, wherever you get your placement. So those are the basic steps. Once you're done that, you can apply to the Law Society, you have to pay the fee, everything, and then you can get licensed as a lawyer in Ontario. So very briefly, once again, lawyer licensing exams, 2 of them, and then experiential training component, either you article or you do the law practice program. Now let's move on to British Columbia. So similar first step, that you're going to be completing your NCA exams, then you apply to the Law Society of BC to start the lawyer licensing process. Now you have to enroll yourself in what they call a professional training legal course. So I have that here, professional legal training course, yes. So it's a 10-week program and you have to complete that program. It's offered by the Law Society of BC and you have to complete the program, and then you also have to write 2 exams based on what they teach you for this course. So you have to pass those 2 exams. And you also have to article for 10 months. Now the difference here, as I talked about Ontario, is that first of all, in BC, you have to article. There's no other way of completing the articling like we had in Ontario, which was the law practice program. The other difference here is that, you have to enroll yourself in a course. It's a 10-week program. And then based off the course, you're going to have to write 2 exams, and you have to pass those exams. In Ontario, there's no course per se. You just have to write the lawyer licensing exams, which is barrister and solicitor exams. So those are some of the differences. And once you've completed the 2 things, the course, the exams, and articling in BC, then you can apply to get licensed as a lawyer. Moving on to Alberta. So similar first step, you have your NCA assessment, you've done your exams, then you apply to the Law Society of Alberta to get your lawyer licensing started. In Alberta, you have to complete a 12-month articling, which means that you have to work under a supervised lawyer and complete the articling for 12 months straight. And again, same thing, there's no law practice program in Alberta, so you have to find articling. The other thing to keep in mind is that in Alberta, you just have to complete the bar course. There's no licensing exams, and the bar course is called the Practice Readiness Education Program, which is designed to help people understand the practice of law and just understand the legal system and how to practice in Alberta. So that's the course which is designed to sort of help you in your practice. But the difference here is that you do have to complete articling, but this is a course, and there's no exam per se like the barrister or solicitor exam that you need to pass in Alberta. And so, the program in Alberta is a combination of face-to-face modules and then also other materials and subjects that you need to study. And once you've done that, you can apply to the Law Society of Alberta to get your legal credentials assessed. So the process is a bit, I don't know if I want to call it simple, but it's different than when we talk about Ontario and BC. And so Alberta is these are the steps that you need to take. Last one, which is Quebec. Quebec is a bit complicated because Quebec is civil law, and it is a little bit different than how you would approach licensing in Ontario, BC, and Alberta. So you have to get your credentials assessed by a body in Quebec. And you have to complete the bar school in Quebec, as well as you also have to article, which is, I believe, 6 months of articling. The process in Quebec is different because of, again, civil law system, also the language. Quebec, you need to know how to speak and write French. So if that's something that if that's a skill or a language skill that you have, then you can look into that. But if that's not what you're looking for, then Quebec would be a province that's just out of the question because you need French. And so Quebec has its own rules, again, because it's civil law, and on top of what we talked about, you have to actually go to the Quebec bar to get your stuff assessed, and then also do bar school, and then 6 months of articling. So just to summarize, we talked about how to get licensed as a lawyer with a foreign degree in Ontario, Alberta, BC, and Quebec. And the starting point is the same. It's the NCA assessment. So if you are not sure what to do, or if you're not sure which province you want to practice in, you can kind of start the process because it's the same. And then you can figure out and do a little bit more research and see which province would make best sense for you, given, how much money you need to live in that province, how much, what kind of lifestyle do you want. Every province has, different benefits and drawbacks. So that's the research that you should do before you decide on moving. But, I hope that this was helpful. I am licensed to practice law in Ontario, so I obviously have my bias, and I would just kind of, it's nice to practice law in Ontario. There are a lot of opportunities, so, but at the end of the day, it's your choice, and, whatever you decide, hopefully it's for the best. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.